You're listening to the Geek Watch Podcast, Episode 86, The Return of What the Dead.
This is the Geek Watch Podcast with Brian Hatcher and Mandy Petrie.
Greetings, Geek Watchers, and welcome to episode 86 of the Geek Watch Podcast. I'm Brian Hatcher, and with me, as always, Geek Watch's own resident geek goddess, Mandy Petrie.
Hello, Brian.
So we have some streaming news. We have some trailers that dropped this week, and we're going to have our first episode of What the Dead for this season 10.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, someone's getting sued.
Okay, I've heard several things about people getting sued. The Prince estate is suing people, and so I don't know which suing we're talking about here.
Well, this is a bit of old school. Do you remember the old X-Men cartoon?
Yes, yeah, that was my first introduction to the X-Men, yes.
Right, well, they're getting sued. Well, specifically Marvel, Disney, Fox, Apple, and Amazon, and other media companies that are connected to the show. They're all getting sued.
Huh?
So basically what this is about, this is over the theme song.
Yep. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, you remember that, right?
Da-da-da-da.
Yeah, done by Ron Wasserman, who composed this theme.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a composer, and I love this name. His name is Zoltan Krisko. Krisko spelled not like Crisco, but Krisko. He's a Hungarian composer. And his case is that the X-Men theme is a clear ripoff of his theme for a Hungarian show that's called Linda, which is about a kung fu policewoman. And you can find this online. I listened to it, and I have to admit, it does sound pretty similar.
Pretty spot on. Okay.
So that da-da-da-da-da, yeah, that's definitely a part of it. And he says that the theme would have been known to TV executives in the United States because they had actually met in person, that these producers had met with Hungarian film industry producers back in the 1980s. And so they were more than well aware of the stuff that he was doing, and that they would have heard that song and could have ripped it off. Now, of course, the big question is, the cartoon was out in 1997. Why is he suing now? Well, he's saying that he didn't know about this theme and hadn't heard about it until back in 2017. Mm-hmm. So he said that's why he's suing now.
Okay.
Now, of course, a lot of the more cynical out there might say, well, maybe he's suing now because Disney owns Fox. They're putting this show on Disney Plus. There's a lot of money, obviously, that delicious, yummy Disney money that's out there that he might be wanting to get a crack of. But like I said, I listened to the theme, and I can see where somebody would say, yeah, that sounds pretty familiar. Mm-hmm. So
now, it's not like Batman the Animated Series and their theme was inspired by Danny Elfman, where it's similar, but this was like Vanilla Ice and David Bowie, kind of. Okay.
Or Men at Work and Land Down Under, and they got sued for borrowing from a folk song, and of course, they wound up losing that case. So I don't know how this is going to go. Like I said, if I were in the courtroom, I think, honestly, if Zoltan Krisko can prove that Wasserman would have had the ability to have heard that theme, I think it's pretty much open and shut, because, yeah, it sounds pretty similar. So, but as we hear more about it, we'll definitely talk about it here. I saw an article that the new Masters of the Universe movie, when we were talking about the one that Sony's putting out, it may not go to theaters.
Straight to streaming, or what's it doing?
Well, yeah, there was an article in the Hollywood Reporter that said that it looked like Sony was looking at possibly selling it to Netflix and not releasing it in theaters. And the reason for that, according to the article, was with Men in Black International tanking, they're worried about this film and how well it'll do. And so they're thinking, instead of paying for a budget to market it and all that, just, put it on Netflix and make some money that way. Which I don't know how good a policy that's going to be. I mean, this is a pretty solid IP, and if it's a well-made movie, I mean, if you don't have faith in it, what movies do you have faith in? I mean, besides Spider-Man. I mean, the thing about it is, Now that Spider-Man is in one aspect kind of back with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they've got one, like I said, they got one movie that Marvel can help them with, but, that's certainly not going to be enough to keep their studio going. They're going to have to develop new movies and new franchises and all of that. And if they're not willing to stand behind what could be a really, really good movie, I don't know. I don't know what do they have faith in besides Spider-Man? If this is true that Netflix is going to have some more content, but again, that's so
Netflix, put out She-Ra. So
right, the cartoon.
Did Sony have the properties to She-Ra as well as Masters of the Universe? Since there's
I kind of wonder about I kind of wonder how that all split up. So, if Sony did have they may have given and that's probably why they're going through Netflix. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, that's the thing. Sony right now, obviously they're skittish.
Mm-hmm. Well, Netflix doesn't have, they do well with what they put out. Their original content, whatever people will go and see it. So the Masters of the Universe will get out there if they put it on Netflix. It could become the massive cult hit that Stranger Things is. We don't know. So I don't really see that being a bad move. Either way, I think it'd be fine.
Yeah, my only question about this is what films do they have enough faith in that they're going to put them out? I don't think that as a studio it's going to be viable for them to just be a content provider for streaming services. They got to get some movies out there. And, besides Spider-Man, I don't know if Sony's really excited about anything they're working on right now. And if you go back and you look at the films they've put out, it wasn't even that Men in Black International didn't hit. It was a huge disappointment. It cost them lots and lots and lots of money. And that was, for the longest time, a solid franchise for them. And so I think at this point, they're really doubting themselves as a studio, and they need a hit. And they need a hit that doesn't, like I said, is not Spider-Man adjacent. And you keep hearing all these rumors, which, again, I don't even know if this is, I doubt this is true, but that, Disney's offering them, Sony, like $5 billion to get Spider-Man and all that back. And I don't know if that's the truth or not. To be honest, I don't think that it is. And even if it were, I don't think that Sony would be willing, even for $5 billion, to sell that property off. Because, I'm looking at this, and it's like, I don't know if they're really have any kind of confidence as a studio in anything that doesn't have Spider-Man involved. So if they don't have Spider-Man anymore, what are they going to do?
It was like when 20th Century Fox wouldn't let Shirley Temple go to MGM for The Wizard of Oz.
Right.
Because she was their moneymaker.
Oh, yeah. Back in the day, stars were basically tied to studios. Mm-hmm. You worked for one studio. They owned you. Mm-hmm. Yep. That was the system. And it wasn't until the defranchisement of studios, I want to say like in the mid-50s, that any of that really started to change.
Screen Actors Guild and
the whole defranchisement of the studio system, and which also allowed movie theaters to show movies from different studios. It used to be if you're MGM's theater, you could only play MGM new movies. So and once that opened up, of course, that allowed a lot of the independent and the B movies that we saw in the 50s and the 60s really to be able to come out. So, but we'll follow along with Sony and see how a lot of that goes. Like I said, with Masters of the Universe, and of course, news will be coming out as we get closer to the next Spider-Man movie. So, between now and then, it's going to be a real question as to what's Sony going to do to turn things around for themselves. How are they going to get their mojo back? And I think that's, for them right now, that's the crucial thing. Since we're talking superheroes, Damon Lindelof was in an interview, he was talking about the new WATCHMEN series for HBO. Mm-hmm. And he mentioned that this season of WATCHMEN is going to be a one-season self-contained story. In other words, no cliffhanger. The entire story that he's wanting to tell is going to be this one season, and that's it. Now, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be any new seasons. Although Lindelof didn't say that there was going to be, or that he thought that there was going to be. But this entire season is going to be a self-contained story.
It could be anthology-like.
Yeah,
I understand.
Yeah, that might be the case. But so if we're only getting one season of it, we'll get pretty much everything that he wants to say about that. So it was an article he was in Deadline, and he says it doesn't necessarily mean that there won't be any more Watchmen, but he's not working on a second. He's not working on a second season currently, is what he was saying. But it's going to be 9 episodes. They're going to be self-contained, and when you get to the end of the season, you're going to get, as he said, a feeling of completeness. And there won't be any hanging threads of storyline. Everything will be resolved by the end of the season. So that's interesting. But then again, in streaming, I mean, especially with Netflix, they don't like to take their shows very long. And so, like I said, apparently HBO, I guess they're watching the Watchmen, and that second season is really going to depend on how well this first one does. So. And I guess they haven't really made that much of a secret. So
will it be good enough to warrant people buying subscriptions? That's going to be, the question.
Well, that's been the thing with streaming totally, is that streaming services and HBO, all of them have been at this. Their theory on series has been, as long as we have one series that makes people, buy our subscription service, then we're set. Everybody who watches doesn't have to like everything we put out. It's just that some people have to like whatever we put out. If some people watch it and it's good enough for them to pay for a subscription, then we're good. That's one strength that they have that, of course, movies don't have, is that, if you don't want to go see the movie, they don't make the money on it. So, in a streaming service and a TV channel service, that's exactly how it works. And so they can afford to be a little more risky. Again, I mean, movie theaters and movie studios are looking for that magic formula to get people into the theaters. And we've talked about this before. Movie theaters now, they're revamping themselves, and they're putting in new seating, and they're revamping their theaters. Some theaters, they're doing these more 3D. They've got the 3DX theaters that that the seats move and you get sprayed with water, and
we'll have to bring William Castle type movies back.
Well, yeah, because that's the route that they're going, is that they're kind of getting some of that William Castle type of spirit.
Everything's gonna have a gimmick.
Everything, yeah, exactly. What do you have that's going to make somebody get out of their chair, get in their car, buy a ticket, pay $10 for a box of popcorn, and go see a film,
When you go see Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, you will smell the chocolate.
Yeah, certainly so. So when Watchmen comes out, of course, like I said, we'll get that one season, and if there's anything after that, I guess we'll find out. So a few trailers dropped this week. Did you see the new Onward trailer?
No.
For Pixar? Oh, you get to see a little bit more about what goes on in that world. Apparently, the two Ogre brothers, their father had died.
Oh.
And when the younger one, of course, voiced by Tom Holland, turned 16, there was a will where the father wanted them to have this object for the two brothers. Of course, Chris Pratt plays the older brother, and it is a wizard's staff,
okay,
which is going to allow them to bring their father back from the dead.
Oh.
So,
wow.
Yeah, I'm like, well, that's kind of heavy for a cartoon. So,
well, did you see Coco? So, yeah, I mean,
that is very true.
That's a whole trip through the land of the dead.
Yeah.
So,
and so they have this. So basically, they have this wizard staff, and they use it to try to bring the father back from the dead. And something goes wrong, and they only get him from the waist down. So they have to dress up so they've got to. So the plot of this movie is they've got to figure out how to get the rest of them there, and they got 24 hours because
this is Weekend at Bernie's.
That's exactly. Some people have actually used that Weekend at Bernie's.
It's very Weekend at Bernie's.
So he's like walking around, and they've built up, like a hoodie on top of him so that it looks like an actual person, but of course he can't talk because he's just, So, and they've got 24 hours to figure this all out to get their father back long enough to talk to him because the magic's only supposed to work for 24 hours. So it's kind of like I said, it's kind of a weird premise. Hey, let's get our dead dad back. But again, it's a fantasy, so there you go. It's like I said, it's hilarious. So apparently, Tom Holland's character is the one who can use the magic, just not very effectively, obviously, because again, this is the world of magic, and the fantasy world has moved on from that, and so. There was a comment, it's like, a wizard staff, why would Dad have it? Dad's not a wizard, he was an accountant. So that was hilarious. I enjoyed the heck out of that. And of course they brought, speaking of trailers, we got a new trailer for season 4 of Rick and Morty. And I know you haven't watched any Rick and Morty.
No.
I've seen the last 3 seasons. Of course, I'll have to introduce you to that, although it's very existential and sometimes nihilistic for a cartoon.
Well, I mean, that's Adult Swim all over. So
yeah, exactly. But
Super Jail,
yeah, it's very much down that road. So now that they've gotten a deal where we're not waiting like a year and a half between seasons, year and a half to 2 years, that we might actually now that they know that they're going to be able to produce these more regularly, it's going to be interesting to see where they take the story. There's a lot of stuff that's been going on, and there's one scene where Morty turns into some sort of monster, which we're familiar with because bad things always seem to happen to Morty. That's the problem with hanging out with Rick. When your grandfather is a mad scientist, basically, you're going to get into some serious trouble. And of course, that's been the theme of the last 3 seasons. But there's a scene where obviously he's deformed, and Rick's telling him to rub this ointment on him. He says, now don't use too much of it or use too little of it, and of course he morphs into this winged monster and runs off roaring, and Rick is like, what did I tell you? And I'm like, what did he do? Use too much of it or use too little of it? Hilarious stuff, but I'm definitely looking forward to the season 4 when it comes out here in about a month or so. I did want to talk a little bit about Joker because I saw it Sunday twice. This is going to be the spoiler-free version. There will be on our Patreon, patreon.com/geekwatch.
Patreon.com/geekwatch.
Right. We will be talking.
You have to say it 3 times, Brian.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, it's the rule.
I thought you had to say it 3 times looking into a mirror.
I just know that whenever I listen to podcasts, they always say it 3 times.
Oh, so
yes.
So to give it the 3rd time, patreon.com/geekwatch. Of course, on patreon.com/geek. Oh, I broke the rule of 3s.
Broke the rule. That must be bad luck then.
That's how we broke the rule of 3s. I will be doing the spoiler version. Brian ruins the movie. But here's what I will say about Joker. It was as artistic as I thought it was going to be. It was as weird as I thought it was going to be. What surprised me was it wasn't nearly as violent as people said it was going to be. I mean, when I compare it to, say, Midsommar, when I saw Midsommar this year, Midsommar was easily more violent. I mean, it's not even comparable.
Now, I keep hearing a lot of comparisons to Taxi Driver.
Oh, well, yeah, definitely. I mean, you're going to have that, you have that Taxi Driver vibe to it. Of course, King of Comedy, and of course, De Niro starred in both those films, and of course, he's in this film.
He plays the Ed Sullivan kind of Johnny Carson
character. The Johnny
Carson
character,
yes.
Character. Murray. Yeah, he plays Murray, and this is the kind of movie you don't want spoilers for. Unless, of course, you're on patreon.com/geekwatch and you want to listen to me spoil the movie, well, then you can, or you've seen it and want to hear about it, then yeah. But I don't want to really, like I said, I don't want to go into spoilers here, but wow. I know a lot of people have been saying Joaquin Phoenix deserves an Oscar, and yeah, I kind of have to say that's the case. I definitely, I mean, all the acting, all the filmography, I mean, everything about it was amazing as a film. It just, one of the ways I described it to somebody, they asked me what did I think about it, and my short review was, it feels like getting punched in the junk by a Fabergé egg. That's how I put it, because it's extremely artful in everything that it does, but what it does is pretty horrible. It's not the feel-good movie of the summer, no question. It's not. And I think one of the reasons why people, and specifically, reviewers, have said that this movie is more, violent, I mean, more violent than it actually was, is because it does violence so well that when you get it, I mean, it has an impact. It feels real. It feels as real as if, you were there. And so it's very effective when it happens. And I think that's one reason why, like I said, a lot of people see it being more violent than maybe in reality that it is. But it's one of those movies, I definitely have to say, it's not, if I were a movie reviewer, it'd be very difficult for me to recommend this movie. I think this is the type of movie, it's like I would recommend it on a case-by-case basis. I would have to do I think I'd have to do a profile on somebody and say, okay, well, maybe you would enjoy this film. And I have to say, Mandy, I know, because I know you haven't seen it, and you're probably not going to go see it.
Probably not, no.
That's one of those movies, if I had to make I know that you appreciate good art, but at the same time, I know you don't like having a bad time. I don't know if I would recommend you to see this movie, to be honest. I think this would be one of those, oh man, I just feel so miserable leaving it though. It's definitely a Greek tragedy. And I think for the aspect of catharsis, I think it's a cathartic film, but it's one of those films that doesn't have handles with it. It doesn't tell you how to feel. It's not, in a sense, really delivering that much of a message. To be honest, I look at it as it's very much like a Rorschach test of a movie. I think a lot of people are projecting things onto this film that aren't there. The film gives you the room to kind of put your own spin on it, I think. So, a lot of people have said, well, this movie's trying to say this, it's trying to say that, and I think it's more likely that the reviewer or the viewer is projecting that onto the film. So whenever I see somebody, they say, well, this is what this film was trying to say, I'm like, well, I think I know a little more about you than so if it's a movie that you think you might be interested in seeing, I definitely see it in a theater. Because sitting alone at home in a dark room watching it, I don't know that's a good thing.
I can remember being back in college and explaining the movie Passion in the Desert to someone, and I was telling them, well, it's about abusive relationships, and they just were very, very confused by that. But this was 20 years ago. But that's what that reminds me of. I guess that was me projecting onto that film, and so
it's like you saw what you
wanted,
what you wanted to see. Mm-hmm. I wanted to talk a little bit of Walking Dead news before we get into Walking Dead. It looks like Lauren Cohan is going to be back for season 11.
Oh, yay!
So, a shame that Whiskey Cavalier didn't do so well, but glad to have her back. But of course, since she is going to be back for season 11, we know that there's going to be a season 11. Mm-hmm. And so, that was announced at this year's New York Comic-Con, and she came out. It was a surprise to everybody, and she said, yes, I'll be back for season 11. And they're like, oh, that means there's a season 11.
Yeah.
Yay. So.
Oh, that's going to be so cute. RJ and little baby Herschel running around together. That's going to be adorable.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be the question, I guess, because we still got to get through season 10 and what happened. We got 8 episodes of the first half of season 10. We've just seen the first one, episode 1, Lines We Cross. And before we get into the spoiler review, and by the way, if you've not seen it yet, pause the podcast now.
Go watch it.
And go watch it and come back. Please go watch it because they need you to, because that's one thing we have to point out is that for a season opener, it didn't do so good.
Really?
It did a 4.0 Nielsen, which is the lowest any episode of The Walking Dead has ever gotten ever.
Wow.
The pilot didn't do that bad. They've certainly committed to season 11, but their ratings are going to have to do better than 4.0. It's that, like I said, it's, we've been talking about issues that Walking Dead's had for a while. And there's been rumors that Fear the Walking Dead is, that they're going to cancel that show, that it's not doing so well. I've been hearing that, but of course, everybody likes bad news. And so that may take that with a grain of salt, but yeah, that doesn't look good, especially not for an opening episode. So, Angela Kang's got some work ahead of her for sure, but we'll keep our fingers crossed. But let's talk about the episode itself.
Okay.
Lots of interesting things happen.
Oh yeah.
It's like
there was a lot, I think they caught us up very well, and it's been our whole universe that we've had coincidence, as much as a Dickens novel.
Basically, this season, a plot just dropped right out of the sky.
Literally.
We have a Russian satellite that crashes into the forest near Oceanside and starts a forest fire,
right?
Which puts them in a bad situation because, of course, it's on Alpha's side of the property line. But they know they're not going to put this fire out, and if this fire could burn down Oceanside, so they have to. Of course, at the beginning, we also see them training against zombies because they're preparing.
Yeah, they have absolutely become Sun Tzu.
Yeah,
it was beautiful to watch. And, I mean, it's like every perfect military execution ever done. I mean, shields up, archers down, back, reload. It was gorgeous to watch.
Yeah, I mean, they basically were doing a Roman phalanx, and you could tell they're preparing for whatever's coming. Although they are trying to live peacefully with the Whisperers, and I mean, even after everything that they've gone through, they're not looking for another fight. And of course, it's gotten to the point now where Carol's gone out to sea.
She became a pirate.
Yes. And of course, her and Daryl are just thinking about leaving. They're ready to hop off and leave. And of course, we get Michonne for a little bit, because one thing that we do know for this season is you're not going to see a lot of her. They're going to basically Rick Grimes her, where she's just going to appear here and there. But of course, she appears long enough to tell her son, I'd give my life for you. And I'm like, oh, I don't necessarily want to hear that.
Yep, and Judith is there telling him, the brave man did this.
Yeah.
It's because he loves you. So RJ's already, we're preparing him. For what's inevitable, and that is heartbreaking. But it was such a beautiful scene, and it was beautifully acted between these two kid actors. They were amazing, and I teared up watching it. And I don't think Michonne probably had to reach very far to pull those tears out. That it was beautiful.
Well,
and they did a good job.
When she announced that at San Diego Comic-Con she was leaving, I mean, there was real tears there for sure. Again, it's like, especially with the show's kind of struggling right now. I mean, we're losing another great character. That's gonna be hard. And
it looks like it's as if they're trying to force characters onto us because of that. That's what I feel like, because all of a sudden we've got the doctor with PTSD, and all of a sudden we've got the doctor with the God complex, and like they kind of shoved it down your throat, like this guy's like this guy's like this. We didn't really see much development. They just told us exposition. Well, this is what's going on.
Sadig, it makes sense that he's got PTSD, because I mean, it's been a few months since we've seen the show, but he went through some really horrible stuff, and I can see that. Yeah, the other doctor, though, it's just it's kind of weird.
Very weird, very awkward. It was it just was not.
Yeah, I mean, he's like the creepy gay guy,
and
it's like
self-important.
Self-important. It's like, and not saying that gay people are creepy, but because I mean, how many characters, gay characters, that they had on that show that aren't. It was just a weird choice to do that with that character. I don't know necessarily.
Yeah, the gay isn't making him creepy. The creepy's making him creepy.
Exactly.
He feels like he's got this power over human life, and I kind of feel like he might even have like that kind of governor.
Yeah, that's a good description, I think. Well, I mean, his actual quoted statement is, "We're like gods in the apocalypse."
Yeah, and he said to him, "You're a god," as he was leaving, or something like that. Something like, "You're a god," as he was walking out of the room.
Yeah.
As this man who's struggling with flashbacks and nightmares, trying to take care of his daughter, and.
Yeah.
So they're pushing a lot of new characterization right on top of us without allowing it to develop. I see that as trying to give us new characters, and kind of been hearing about a new Whisperer, and like causing Gamma causing divide in the ranks. We haven't seen her. We've just heard about her. So I'm anxious to see what they do with her and see if they kind of do the same thing.
Yeah. That's going to be an interesting question also. That's the thing. I mean, obviously they're trying to bring in more characters because they're losing characters, but again, and you make a really good point about, they're really piling on a lot of stuff on new characters right off the bat.
Well, like the deaf sisters, when we know that the one is losing her hearing worse now, but we've watched that through the last year.
Right.
We've watched that happen. They didn't, push that on us right at the beginning. Oh, she's losing her hearing,
Oh, yeah.
They allow that to develop. So I care a lot more about her losing her hearing and her having that fear than I do about this crazy guy who thinks he's a god,
Oh, yeah. Well, again, this is from literature, in a book or a story, they would refer to this as info dumping, where you're giving all the information right up front, which is usually not a good idea. I mean, in a story, you don't give people information, you make them want to know it, and then you make them wait for it. And so that particular character, like I said, if you feel like you got everything you need to know about this character in that little 3 to 4 minute vignette, and
right.
There's some of that they should have definitely held back. Especially the part that he's a bit of a creeper, let that kind of develop. And I mean, they made him so creepy in one. I mean, it's like we need to make sure that you understand that this is a creepy guy.
Yeah, don't make this guy say I'm a god. Show me him killing someone that he thinks is suffering. Then I know.
Yeah.
I know what he's capable of. Don't tell me what he's capable of. Show me.
Yeah.
That's just my thing. Maybe some people do like that sort of exposition up front.
Well, the thing about it too is that, I mean, he's basically telling you what he is and who he is right off the bat. And usually in writing, people, when they're talking, are very rarely telling the truth about themselves. Because in screenwriting, if somebody is saying exactly what they're feeling inside and they're expressing it in words, it's known as on the nose. And your dialogue should never be on the nose. They should be saying one thing but thinking the other. And yeah, like I said, this guy that whole scene was really, really on the nose. And I think in that situation why it doesn't really work that well. But that's not saying that nothing worked in that episode. In fact, one thing that we've been waiting, I know you and I have been waiting for a long time, is at the end of the episode, we got that standoff we've been waiting for, Carol and Alpha.
Well, it's just the looks, right now, and that's so much saying in the eyes and what is about, that the satellite crashing, the forest fire has nothing on what is about to happen between these two women.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the explosion that's about to happen is going to make, a space station falling from the sky look like nothing.
We've been saying for a while now that, Alpha is the anti-Carol for sure. And to say, well, this is what would happen to Carol, in a different situation, although, I mean, Carol is, she doesn't put up with a whole lot, and she can do some messed up stuff, and she's done some messed up stuff when she's had to. And so those are two characters you're like, well, what would happen? You want to know. And they like I said, they really teased that off. They really and especially since they're both in the same situation. They're both in a situation where the other side has taken a child from them. Alpha lost her daughter, and Carol lost her adopted son.
Right.
So again, they're basically set up they're two sides of the same coin. And we've all been asking since Alpha showed up and we've seen what kind of person she is. What's going to happen when she and Carol meet up? Well, they're like, well, you're going to find out.
Yep.
And I can't wait when that blows off. But for this first half, we've got 8 episodes, and that'll end. The last one will be November the 24th. And so we still got a few weeks left of it. And like I said, we're not going to see a whole lot of Michonne in these episodes, but of course they're going to be working on her departure. Yeah. So, as the weeks go on, we will definitely discuss what we see and give our opinions of it, and let's see how they can, what kind of a cliffhanger they can leave us in November. So with that said, we come to the end of episode 86 of the Geek Watch podcast. Thank you for listening, and tune in next week for the latest in geek news and views with the Geek Watch podcast. For Mandy Petrie, this is Brian Hatcher, reminding all the Geek Watchers out there, we're all geeky about something. Be proud of yours. See you next time. Thank you for listening to the Geek Watch podcast. If you enjoyed this program, don't forget to like and subscribe on your preferred platform and share this podcast on your social media. For links to all the ways you can listen to the Geek Watch podcast, as well as leave comments and suggestions, visit our website at geekwatch.net. The Geek Watch podcast is a Hanging J production.